Hey, this is Ayal with Atlanta Against Cancer. We are here at Atlanta Against Cancer Week at Ponce City Market. Woo woo!
Woo!
Yeah. So today I'm here with Tahra and to talk about her experience, how she met me super weirdly, and all of the future that we're moving into. And so I think the best place to start is pronounce your name so that everyone knows I said it correctly this time.
It is Tahra.
There we go. And tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, my cancer story.
And your where
in
you're
general.
from.
Alrighty, they don't care about that.
We
sure.
can start
I'm from
there.
Seattle. Woo
Ooh,
woo.
woo woo.
Woo woo.
Anybody from Seattle here?
No.
Today?
But anyway, my name is Tahra Shatard. I was diagnosed in December of 2017, triple negative breast cancer. I found the lump. It is something that runs in the family. Both my grandmothers had breast cancer, paternal, maternal. My sister also is a survivor twice over. And so I always knew to be diligent about checking myself, as well as to get mammograms. I started getting mammograms when I hit 30, maybe 32, something like that, which was interesting because I was dissuaded, or they attempted to dissuade me, let's say, to get the mammogram because of my age. And I know there's also a history of medical bias, which is what I want to talk about as well.
Right.
So despite that, I'm fortunate that I have parents who are, will retire now, but father, surgeon, mother, PhD, molecular biology, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line is parents who are in the sciences who always taught us to be very much self-advocate. They taught us to self-advocate, and also we witnessed what can happen to people who are being mistreated based on assumptions by their caregivers. So as a result, yeah. Woohoo.
For sure.
Yes,
yeah.
But I had been getting mine 6 months earlier. I had a negative mammogram.
And because all of us in the room totally know what a mammogram is and what it is to do, would you in 2 sentences
Basically,
explain?
you get your boobs smashed in a
that's
machine,
what I thought. That's what okay.
and it scans it.
Boob smash machine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, woohoo. Lots of fun.
Yeah.
But you also should self-check. Now, I'm not saying that I was as wonderful about doing it every single month, but I did check enough to notice, something's not right here. And then within 2 days, I was getting a biopsy. So
That's something that in our previous one we didn't even talk about, which was the the turnaround time.
Yeah.
So you found out you had
I felt a lump and I knew exactly what it was.
And you were like, I know I have cancer.
Yes.
And then
made a phone call immediately.
Went to the doctor, and there 2 days later,
getting biopsy. And then the 29th, I think, was the day when they got the call. December 29th. Happy New Year.
December 29th.
That it was, obviously.
What
cancer.
was your, and it's funny because I know you a little bit as a person, so I'm interested in this question personally, but what was your reaction to the talk, hey, you've got
very
cancer?
Logical. In my heart, I knew.
Right.
So immediately, because also with the familial history,
right.
I just assumed that has to be it. So I wasn't surprised. I didn't tell anybody. Actually, I didn't even tell my husband until afterwards, because I wanted to make sure before I said anything to anybody that I definitely had it. I didn't want to worry anybody, didn't want to worry my family members. And I was relatively even private with the whole process as far as letting everyone know. Close family, close friends, yes. Because family doesn't necessarily mean they're close family.
Fair.
And
how old were you at the time of your first
I don't care.
diagnosis?
I'm happy to see how say my age because I look so great.
Oh, I didn't even.
42.
Okay.
42. Yeah.
Interesting. Was that similar to your mother and grandmother?
No, they were much older.
Okay.
When my grandmothers, I think they were both in their 60s. One succumbed to it, and the other survived for many years. She passed in her late 80s. So she had a mastectomy, And then my mom's mom passed when I was an infant, so I don't have any memories of her.
So the experience of, breast cancer is like the one, we've talked about this a bunch, like that's the one we all know about and we all see, right?
Right.
It's like the pink and
correct.
And
that has a lot to do with Susan G. Coleman and getting a lot of publicity.
I did, like, before the event, I looked up where the ribbon came from, and it has nothing to do with cancer. And it's been a story for another time, but you look up why the ribbon became the ribbon, you're like, okay, fair enough. It's had to do with tying them around trees.
Oh.
That was like a thing.
Okay.
There was a song or something.
All right.
And that's literally, it was the whole
I did not know that. Well, I guess
I looked it up before the event just in case it ever came up. But so, it's breast cancer. It's this super well-known cancer. I guess that's the way to say it.
Because it's much, because it is so common. Mm-hmm. Lung cancer, I think breast cancer is the second most common one. I think. I could be wrong. But that's
your experience with it, like, I know there was a topic you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And so, like, like when we talked about it, because we had talked a little bit about, like, I tell people all the time, I'm not a scientist, not a doctor, really shouldn't be giving any sort of medical advice or don't receive medical advice from me. But, like, because I can give it, but just don't accept it.
Don't follow
it. But, like, tell us about your experience. And I think you heard us talk about before the cancer experience. What was your cancer experience like?
It fucking sucked. I know this is going to get bleeped out.
No, we can,
Cancer sucks. There's
we keep checking with him if we can do that, but we can do it.
Yay. I was going to do it anyway, just mic up.
So, like, tell us about your cancer experience.
My cancer experience. Oh, man. Okay, so this all goes back to being somebody who self-advocates. So once I got the diagnosis, then, they have the meeting with this is your cancer team. Well, I already knew this is not going to be my cancer team. I'm glad that I had a team of people to explain, to describe, et cetera, but I was like, I'm coming to get the prognosis that you should suggest, but I'm going to go ahead and get a couple of other individuals to give me, basically they gave me all the same information. Ultimately, I went with Dr. Rogsbert Phillips Reed, who is outstanding. My parents have ties to Atlanta, having gone to Morehouse and Spelman. I went to Spelman. That's why I ended up here. And woo-woo. So as a result,
everything we can here.
Woo. But as a result of that, they had colleagues and friends who were here, and so I was basically recommended. She was recommended highly because she does a lot of wonderful work. And also, then I also had everyone vetted. I sent everything to my dad, as well as, I did my own checking, but it's different when it comes from a medical professional who understands what everything is.
Right, yeah, for sure.
So with that, and I even realized then, I was thinking, like, this is, for someone who may not have the same sort of, fortitude or maybe background as they could definitely just go with whatever they're being told. We as a society are taught to trust our medical professionals.
Sure. And
I'm not that way. So I was like, that's nice, but I'm going to continue on. So anyway, after having a few other people who I, saw, I went with that. And I went with the most aggressive possible treatment. I'm triple negative, or I had triple negative breast cancer, which is most common among Black women. It is not the most common cancer. I think it's about 15% of breast cancer patients are diagnosed with it.
What do the negatives mean?
Oh, it has to do with estrogen, progesterone. Thanks. Yeah.
Phone a friend.
Yeah, thank you. As well as the HER2 gene, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, indicators of what causes the growth and development of it. And so triple negative is highly aggressive. If you find it early, which I did, then you have a much higher success rate of survival, obviously. But what is unique about it is because it rapidly reproduces, you have to take action immediately. So there was no like, oh, I'm going to debate on this. No, I need to do the most aggressive thing. So I had chemo. I did that for 4 months, 8 rounds every 2 weeks. And then I had surgery, double mastectomy. And then I had complications, and so I had like 6 surgeries. So it's spawned quite a year and a half of reconstruction.
So it's, I have like a million questions about the physical side of this, and I know we want to talk about some other things. So like because it's fascinating that like you have to you said a boob smash machine essentially.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
I have an idea of what it looks like, but I don't know that I'll ever have. I don't know, but having gone through those, and I don't know if it's too personal, but like it's such an important part of your body as a woman, right? And it's
in theory,
let's say, and so society tells us. But did that affect you having to have all these surgeries in these places that
no
felt public?
No. I think everybody has seen my boobs at this point. I feel even to a point where my husband was like, Tahra, like, because people ask me, can I see, through many of my operations? Because, of course, I was like, well, I have one nipple. I don't have another one.
Fascinating.
One of my operations was to take, the tissue and muscles from my back to relocate up front. So I was showing people like, hey, and in a restaurant, and my husband was like, oh my God. I was like, but it's just a lump of flesh, literally.
Right. Yeah.
But he said, men look at it still as breasts. I said, okay. But yeah, now I have a fake nipple.
But it's a similar testicular cancer. It's like it does that. I have a good friend with testicular cancer, and it's like, yeah, I have a fake ball. It's there though. They put it there.
I mean, for aesthetic purposes.
For aesthetic purposes, right?
But at any rate, it never occurred to me of, oh, this is an issue. When I was born, I didn't have breasts. So it wasn't a big deal.
Did you feel like there was, because one thing I know being a guy in the cancer industry is that it's like we're not nearly as, I always say, like, we're not nearly as organized, as vocal, as positive. Like social media and stuff is very different for prostate cancer comment boards and things like that. And it is amazing in so many ways, like how much cancer and pink are linked. It's amazing in tons of ways. Did you find that there was a strong community for you to tap into?
I really don't know if there was. I'm sure there is a strong community, but I was kind of private about it.
Right.
So it's not something that I really attempted to foster. It wasn't until after I had my first operation, similar to this fellow here, that I was like, let me take a picture of myself. I'm bald with no hair on my eyes, no eyebrows, no nothing, in the hospital gown, and I survived. So that's when I posted to say, hey, this is what I'm going through. And then, people were like, oh, I'm so supportive. But ultimately, like, that's nice in theory, but are you actually going to show up? Do you actually call me? Do you actually text me? Do I talk to you? And then what was amazing is people who were friendly, who ended up truly showing me that they were friends who were there for me, when people who I had known for decades really, gave me a like. Thanks.
It's the like. I mean, on any given day, I can hate you for a like, and I can love you for a like. Like on any given,
I needed a little bit more than a like.
Different, yeah. She wanted a comment, one share. Just when you get the share, sometimes you're like, to any cancer. Like I post something about my cancer, and then you get a share, and I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't know this was I didn't know this was going to keep going.
This is newsworthy.
Yeah, it got picked up. So. But, we've talked about this. So, like, is there, I don't know how to ask it. This is a tough question for me. Like, is there a Black experience in this? Or how do you frame that? Because we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But
okay.
in
this is where I'm going to get
2024 world of public perception and all,
Well, this is the issue, really. Black women are less likely to get it, but much more likely to die from it. That is just a fact. And if you're under 50 in particular, you're twice as likely as a white woman to die. So not only did I have a cancer that, is super aggressive, I'm also in that category of statistically speaking, being having a a higher mortality rate, lower survival rate. So that's also part of my whole point of being really aggressive about my treatment. But with that, so much of it is based on perception, lack of access to care, as well as other underlying health issues. Ultimately, though, as I was saying when I was younger, how I was, the doctor tried to dissuade me from getting a mammogram. And I'm thinking, like, if I say I want a mammogram, I get a mammogram. I know that is my right to have that. So I don't care what you have to say or whatever you put into your calculator. It doesn't matter because it's me and it's my life. So regardless of what anyone else may think, their perceptions, even when I was even when I was in the hospital, I was like, I'm being under-medicated. I am in a shit ton of pain. This is not working. I feel like I got my chest ripped out because I did.
You did get your
right. And so even that, I ended up, it was just like a blank stare. And I said, well, statistically and historically, and then that's when I got cut off because there were people, I'm sure, doing the rounds with the physician who were, didn't want me to talk about the historic disparity in healthcare when it comes to black people and concepts of pain and us being able to somehow endure pain and not feel pain or not feel pain at all.
But do you think that I don't know, there's a lot there because you could ask questions about, do you think that there is stigma in the black community about health, about this kind of health?
Yeah, definitely. There is, we have shown historically that there is racism in healthcare, disparity as far as treatment, and even being believed that you have an issue, as well as we know terrible situation, even if you talk about like what happened to Tuskegee with syphilis, excuse me. Situations where we're used as case studies. Even when it comes to gynecology, it is a black woman who was experimented on, a series of black women who were enslaved. So the father of gynecology, experimented on enslaved women who had no anesthesia, who had nothing, and they were testing things out on them, of course. And now we say, oh, this is so great, what great progress we've made, but it was on the backs
but it's like, of course.
So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a black experience so much as it's an experience of distrust, but most importantly, it has to do with a lack of access. Black women are more likely to get diagnosed later on with later stages. So it has to do with the access to care. That is definitely rooted in finances. It's definitely socioeconomic.
I was going to say, yeah.
So you're finding that to me is a major component of it. Again, I was fortunate that I have had a different type of financial background as far as that goes with my parents, but also being able to have the awareness as well as the wherewithal to say, no, this is what I need. This is what I need. And I'm going to speak up. So that's what I really, really want to emphasize, is that you need to advocate for yourself. Plain and simple, no matter who you are, because no one's going to do it for you.
Well, do you think that, because there's so much you can, if you throw out the term socioeconomic issues, you're like, and then, I'm saying this, it feels like I'm devil's advocating myself in some way, but like, how high do you put health on the things we need to invest in?
Of course.
And it's like, you would think everything you would invest in would circulate in that way. It doesn't seem to be happening. That doesn't seem to be reality.
One's individual health, that's versus the health industry. It's two different things, right? As far as the health industry, your sickness is what allows them to make money, right?
But how do you think
versus
about
your own health and how you invest in yourself?
If we just had more stands where you could get public mammograms, is that like the fix?
Okay,
you know what
that goes back to my breast surgeon, Dr. Rodsford Phillips Reed, who has she's amazing. And she has the annual walk for breast cancer in Piedmont Park. That is to benefit her charity, which is Sisters by Choice. And what she does is she has a mobile breast clinic. She will come to neighborhoods where women don't have care. She specifically treats women who are underinsured or not insured or homeless women. So that regardless of your economic background, she's offering care. So she was doing it for many years out of her own pocket, but ultimately she founded this charity so that she could fund this program so she could continue to treat these women. So to me, that's everything. So when people talk about giving money and doing whatnot, I want to put money where I can actually see the fruit of the labor versus going to facilitate someone's nonprofit where you only have to give 20% to actually a way for it to,
part of a part.
Exactly.
So I think, it's really interesting because it's tough for me to imagine. It is. Obviously that's not going to be my experience. I can say like, well, I've had similar experiences, but like that exact experience, it won't be my experience. You'll see things that I didn't see because you're looking for things I would never look for. In that reality is, and I think a really key word you used, and and if I explain something wrong, or you can always cut me off, but like that word you used, trust, like it wasn't, to me, I didn't think about it. Like I went and got a second opinion. It was a terrible experience that cost way too much money. Nothing happened, and I heard the same information twice. So that went with the first people, but my experience, and it's and Laura's here, and it's funny because I went to Piedmont Cancer Institute, and they get a big woot woot from me and from Bebop, and like my story couldn't have been told without them, and it wouldn't have been told. Actually, it's probably just as good a word. And my experience, because of who I am as a person, I can gel with people very easily. I can meet someone, but I will give trust very easily. That could be because my mom did that when we were kids. That could be because the socioeconomics of my life. But we know, because it's statistics, it's many things, that doesn't exist the same in the Black community. And so when you're looking at trusting a doctor, what is, like, explain that, because really from the basic, like, there's two different, and not to rant too long, but like there's two different things that for me I would like to better understand. One is this trust thing, trusting a doctor. Distrust of a doctor sounds crazy to me. Also, but that's to me, you know what I mean?
Understood. Yes.
Like, and then the other thing is like, what in your eyes, what's a fix? Is a fix massive? Is it generational? Is it 20, 30 years? Or is it merely like pop-up stand tents of get your education here? So those are two big different questions, but those are kind of...
This is true. I mean, ultimately, this isn't even necessarily with cancer. This is just with people in general, whatever it is that they're getting done, whether it's cosmetic procedures or if it's something that is life or death. So often, again, people are taught to be trusting without actually looking to see, okay, where did you get your education? Are you board certified? Where, from, whom? Let me see some actual results of people who had this operation done before. Versus, like, now we are in an age where everybody's like, oh, Instagram, I see someone post something, they have all these millions of followers, they must be good.
Right.
And they're terrible, right? So that part does require you as an individual to go ahead and look that information up. But also, on top of that, speaking about it is how other people know. So many times people will, things that just to me are just illogical, ridiculous, and I'm thinking, did you think about that before you said that? They just really truly don't know, and they're too trusting. Being educated doesn't mean anything. You can have all the education in the world. That doesn't mean you have good common sense. That doesn't mean you have the skill nor the talent. So for me, that is very important. Referrals also matter, but it also has to come from a source I can trust. So, but then going back to that word, trust, what does that mean? What does it look like? Again, I have to base it on me looking up to see who you are, where you got this education, and also seeing actual results of your work. But referrals do help from people who have experienced positively as well as negatively that person's care. So, yeah.
And I mean, for me, it's fascinating, and I think that it's like I feel like we're breaking a secret here or something.
I mean,
like,
really, you do need to have this conversation, and a lot of times people do not talk about
and it's
healthcare in general. at all whatsoever.
The concept that I wouldn't trust a doctor is funny for me because for me individually, because I didn't do that well in school. The school wasn't my thing. I'm trusting this doctor did. I'm trusting they went to class and
They may have,
and I hope so.
that doesn't mean anything.
I know, and now I feel like I'm sitting here and I'm like, but I really liked my doctors, and but the thing is too is I think maybe an added asterisk to what you're talking about socioeconomically is different groups, demographics, however you want to say it, actually have more choices.
This is absolutely correct.
I had a lot of choices.
Yeah.
I was getting when I got cancer, I'm like, maybe I'll live in Houston for a year and go to MD. Maybe I'm like, what are my options here? But not everybody can have those.
That speaks to that as well, because if you don't have insurance,
right,
or you're underinsured, you have far less options. And even when you have insurance and you get dissuaded by a physician to do what you need to take care of yourself based on, as I said, some calculation you enter into your computer, I'm thinking to myself, did you do that for this person who came right before me or versus the person after me? So it is about having this conversation, whether it be a booth, whether it be the vans coming into the communities to screen people or whatnot, word of mouth, discussion, podcasting, whatever the case may be. But unfortunately, in this society, healthcare is very expensive. And if you do not know and no one teaches you, you are in a terrible situation.
It's interesting to think about that, I was using in my mind, I was thinking of the analogy of waiters, that if I'm at a restaurant and a waiter is mean to me and then I see them be nice to someone else, and or they get, somebody gets something and then it's almost as if what were they eating? It's on the menu. Oh, don't talk to me that way, but I will second guess a waiter. The idea of second guessing a doctor and based on how they feel about me, it's not something I've really put too much thought into.
But then that goes into the assumption, we're going to assume that this waiter doesn't have the same education.
Right. There's so much that goes into it.
And there are many brilliant people who are in the service industry. Right. And then there are a lot of people who were able to, depends on where they went to get their degree for medical school, to be honest. And
so then if part of the problem is choices, which means you need more choices. We're so saturated with, I can only go in this community. It's like the concept of food deserts. And I don't know that I've ever heard of medical deserts, but the concepts definitely work.
Oh, it's the same thing.
The quality, though, of doctor who is going to do those things, who's going to pop up at these different places, who's going to,
right.
If I'm going to get that research money, or I'm going to go do, public defender work or whatever, it's very different.
And you're right, because it also depends upon the physician and where they are in their career, and whether they're at a point where they want to work selflessly. Oftentimes that's in the beginning of the career, as well as the tail end of their career. Not everyone is willing to make those types of sacrifices, considering how expensive medical school is. And I understand that, and I'm in no way going to downplay anybody who does their own thing, private practice, because that is what allowed me to be knowledgeable and sitting here today, still alive. Shout out to Dad.
Shout out, Dad. Thanks to Dad. So, on a lighter note, I hope it's kind of a funny thing to segue into this, but talking about your cancer experience, what were some of your biggest complaints? Obviously, describing mammogram has kind of changed my mood in my life right now a little bit. I guess, my mom would be like, oh, I went and got a mammogram. I'm like, oh, okay, are you good? Oh, okay. But I guess I didn't really think about what she just went and did,
Right.
And now I feel terrible. But part of Bebop is so that we open up opportunities to talk about these topics, to discuss complaints and what we liked, what we didn't like about our certain experience. But when you had to go to chemo for 4 months and then you had 6 surgeries, what is well, I guess I'll ask basic question first. What is your, like, was there a complaint? Like, is there anything that stood out that was like,
I mean, it sucks.
I mean, I know it sucks, but I'm saying,
wasn't
you know,
like,
you go to the
"Woohoo,
hospital and it's, or like using the restaurant analogy, it's like, you know what I hate is when you get bread and butter and the butter's cold and I can't, like, stupid analogy, right? But that's what I mean. Like, what were your, like, what happened that you were like, why am I having to do this? Or like, you know, was there?
You know what I'm thinking of is so trivial. It's
love
so
it.
trivial. It's just basic inconveniences. But then again,
Let's
that
get petty.
speaks to well, no, but it also speaks to the privilege of having been in a position to be inconvenienced.
Sure.
So when it comes to, like, when you go through chemo, you have to pee every 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You
Pee
have
a
to go to the
lot.
bathroom all the time. So the thing is, you're hooked up. So you have to, like, wheel yourself over there, over to the bathroom, hopefully not get caught in anything with all of the lovely tubing and whatnot. I mean, that to me is very minor. It's inconvenient, but in the great scheme of things, that's really nothing.
But I think, you know,
And it's cold as hell in those rooms.
it is
Well, I
cold.
guess
But sometimes
it would
it's
be
nice
cold.
it's
It would
cold.
be
I don't
cold
know.
as
Put the
hell.
blanket. I'd sleep with the cold of the blanket
But
on.
it-
It's
yes,
cozy. But
understood.
Not
But-
not the point of this, but the reason I ask, and one of the reasons I think pettiness has become a cornerstone of bebop, is because I think being petty is relatable. Like these are like whether does socioeconomics to the side, you know, of all the disproportions and statistics, it's like personally, I don't always feel like I can, like me as an individual, like it would take a lot for me to set up a group of mammograms around the city, and I wanted, you know, prostate check stations are a tough thing to set up, and for a plethora of reasons, and but I can relate to exactly that. Like, no matter where you are at whatever hospital, how nice to roll your, like, I guess it's not a gurney, but the thing. To
I hope
like,
it's not a
I don't think
gurney.
gurney's the right word, but like
But
to
the
roll it
IV
over and then to
rolling.
like be in the bath, you like whip your dress over and all these things, and you're like, ugh.
it's terrible. It's terrible anyway. But then on top of that, like for me, like as far as the biggest real side effect that I still suffer from today is bone pain. You never think about your bone marrow until
Did they take bone marrow
no,
out?
no.
of
but
you?
that is where your
Feels so bad
it's so
when you know
related with
anything.
your blood, and that the chemo is killing out all of the cells that reproduce the fastest to kill the cancer, which is why, of course, your hair follicles, you know, everything comes out. But also, that is like the foundation of your health is in your bone marrow with the blood. Oh, Lordy, this is not a scientific
scientists here today,
response.
so-
But ultimately,
Yeah.
anything that is getting killed off is what rapidly reproduces, and that is the bone marrow as well. So it's this aching and constant pain. I felt like it was like weights on my
But see, what's
body
crazy to me
all the
is, like,
time, and it never goes away. I think the kicker is like, oh.
but that's not. See, like, that's in some ways like that's cancer petty.
Yeah.
You know,
It
like
is.
that's like the other one is regular life petty. Like, gotta roll this thing and do all this stuff. But
Right.
like that's so. And what's in the way I'm kind of like putting this together and looking at it is like in the tiers of pettiness, because that's kind of where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Is that like those are relatable things?
Yeah.
I can't really relate necessarily to the mammogram story, but I can relate to the prostate check guy. It's a whole nother story. I can relate to no eyebrows, no hair, and for me, I gained a ton of weight during cancer.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be skinny with
I
big
thought it
boobs
was like
when I was done.
I thought it was like like this is
Joke's
gonna
on
cheat.
me.
This is a cheat system, but no. And jokes aside, but that kind of that's in some ways that's what we have to do to break the lines
Absolutely.
of communication between the socioeconomic lines within the cancer patient, survivor, thriver community. Because if we can't do it, like how the fuck is a doctor going to talk to me in so many ways?
Right.
Like if I can't talk to another cancer patient and be like, no, I get you. That's so hilarious. Then it's like, fuck, doctors have no idea. You know, they not that they don't know. That's a bad thing to say. It's not what I mean. Those intricacies that make it special and different when a person who may be living in a tougher economic situation, like I feel like they need that. And that's what we can do no matter what. By sharing our stories, by doing things like this, we can not only bring up, hey, this needs to be talked about. It needs to be talked about more. I think two of the biggest things we've talked about today are, in this conversation, are trust,
Yes.
which is huge because as soon as trust is broken, it's much easier to break trust than it is to build it and keep it.
True.
And that can be generational, we spoke about, but then also there's no quick fix for this.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that one man. You have to keep getting checked.
And again, access.
Mm-hmm.
Access. And so education and access go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know, right, and no one teaches you, that is why, and that is really the ultimate reason why it is such a important conversation to have, and that I'll continue to have, because more often than not, Black women get diagnosed when it's stage 3, stage 4.
And then, yeah.
And then they succumb to it. So that is across economics.
Really?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So there's a lot.
It's so it's interesting. It's like, and I know we have to wrap. I know but for me, this experience is, I look at Bebop and Atlanticans, especially we're both Atlanta people, and we both in the city,
Yes,
Atlanta people.
yeah.
And that's like how we met, and like
Inside
when
the
we met, we were
perimeter.
like, I always, whenever I meet people for coffee, I have to like think like, where do they live? What traffic is, because if I'm meeting you in Smyrna, I have to drive to Smyrna, then you're going to get a different version if you meet me closer to my home. So but this idea here that like, we can have these conversations, we can break these lines, we not only have to, and there's something about you being willing to talk about it in this way.
Yes.
And being willing to, I love the concept that your grandmothers communicated it to their mothers, who communicated it to you, and so on and so forth. And that is when you can't trust the doctor, that's the family, your community. Not all families close, we just said that too. But your community, your friends, that's who saves your life. So I think, again, this is like the common thread. Community is everything.
And I was very lucky, as I said, very fortunate. I have a wonderful husband who was there through everything, because sometimes this breaks up people's relationships even. That's a whole nother story.
Sure.
I know of some terrible stories.
We don't. Not
but
that
we're not going to talk
petty.
about that.
We said
we're not
petty,
going to talk
but
about
not that petty.
But and my parents and as I said, one sister who is a survivor, who I had to tell her, like, she was very public about her whole issue, her cancer chronicles, and I was like, I'm not telling nobody nothing, My other sister also. So I was lucky. Very lucky, and because it is something that is in my family. Interestingly enough, we are all BRCA negative. Huh.
What is
BRCA
we
is
have to close, but
sorry.
you
BRCA
can't
is
just say random words
it's
here.
basically a
I'm just
genetic
kidding.
mutation to see if you are predisposed to having breast cancer.
And you were not.
All of my family members, I have many cousins, so it's obviously in our family. But whatever that mutation is, has not been quote unquote discovered. We're aware of it, but again, who's
Wow.
being studied
Interesting.
for these genetic mutations? It's not a woman who looks like me. The end.
The end.
Mic
Yeah,
drop.
No,
Except I won't drop your
that's
mic.
great. I mean, so, please don't. But, first and foremost, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, since we've met. I mean, like, dealing with me and Bebop
No
is its own
worries. No
fun
worries.
ride
I
for
think
everyone who's met us.
What you're doing is so important, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate the fact that when we spoke before this, that you're the type of person who, I mean, you don't have to be adamant with me, but I'll use the word adamant about, this is the topic I really want to talk about. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this way. And I think that's great, and it's commendable, and that's why I want to keep doing this, because we need to have those conversations. So thank you so much.
Thank you
and
for
can we
having
get a
me.
woot woot from the crowd?